How's it going, everybody? This is Dominic Minchella. I am the Kansas City Chiefs beat writer for On SI and the host of the Kansas City Chiefs Insider Podcast. Thank you guys so much for stopping in today. If you stopped in yesterday, we recapped and recovered and talked about and all the adjectives and verbs to describe the meaning that the Kansas City Chiefs and the Arizona Cardinals played their first preseason game. We kind of recapped it. If you missed it, be sure to go check it out. As we know, the Kansas City Chiefs did drop to the Cardinals. However, you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? The Chiefs did not have a lot of their ones out there. A lot of guys are still the guys who are out there are a lot of players who are still looking for a role on this roster. So moving into the second preseason game in a couple of days against the Seattle Seahawks, expect to see more time of play for the ones on the roster, as well as the development and to see where the Kansas City Chiefs 2025 NFL draft class is. Against the Cardinals, some draft picks, they made their presence known. And if you may remember, before the training camp period even began, I gave you guys a breakdown of expectations that I have for multiple different players on the Kansas City Chiefs, whether that be veterans like Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce, or newcomers in Christian Fulton, or Jalen Moore. And we talked about the draft class. However, if you remember me saying, I said I haven't covered one specific guy because I needed to see him in action. And that was Nohl Williams. I have touched on every single other draft pick for the Kansas City Chiefs from the first round to the seventh. And I skipped over the Chiefs' third-round pick in Nohl Williams because I needed to see exactly what he did this preseason and training camp. As we know, he had a little bit of a tough period in a transition from the collegiate level to the professional level. Defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo noted a bunch of those changes for him. And if you think about it, it is like if you're switching schools or you were a freshman into a sophomore, stuff like that. You're going to go up, and whether you are transitioning, things are different. The game of football might still be the exact same, the same rules that they were playing, but the higher level of play comes into play. The Kansas City Chiefs, they know that Nohl Williams is going to be able to be a guy that can hopefully develop into a starter one day down the line. But I will give you my expectations on Williams for the upcoming season. Him being a third-round pick, in my opinion, I think that he should be out there relatively more than the other draft picks. However, his kind of role as a cornerback is going to be all dependent on how the veterans in the on the roster develop. However, against the Cardinals, we saw Nohl Williams have multiple different roles. Yes, he was out there defending. Yes, he had a great game. He had a tackle for loss, a pass defended, and 3 solo tackles to his name. And while you can use him in that area, he is also a prime kick return option for the Kansas City Chiefs, much like Jalen Royals is an option, right? This isn't a situation that Nohl Williams is unfamiliar with. In fact, in his collegiate career, since 2020, he had 651 kick returns, yards, that is, in 27 attempts, averaging just over 24 yards per return. He also has some experience in punt return, so it's got to be noted as well. But it is an area that he could easily see himself kind of eased into for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially because, there's a lot of cornerbacks on this roster that are trying to make their presence known and trying to get more snaps. Against the Cardinals, he had the second highest returnage yards behind Nico Remigio. He had, in the one attempt that he had 28 kick return yards. And it's tough to compete with Remigio because he is going to be a guy that they've already talked about it. He's above everybody else in that department. He's got the speed. I mean, this guy, in the one attempt he had, he almost took it half the field. He returned it for 48 yards. The speed is going to be able to be an asset for Nohl Williams. However, he can prove that when he isn't in the defensive backfield or just in the defense in itself, he can be a guy to utilize on offense with his speed. He ran a 4.5 and at the combine results, that is 4.5 second 40-yard dash. He had a vertical jump of 33.5, a board jump of 10 feet, and a 10-yard split of 1.54 seconds. There's a lot of expectations and Nohl Williams is held to a high degree. He was projected to go in the round that he did, but he also has a projection of being a potential backup that develops into a starter, which is the role that he has right now. As a defender, though, as we kind of put away the kick return option for Nohl Williams, he is a guy that can also be relied on as a defensive back. He had 7 interceptions last season with California. 7. That isn't necessarily a number that can just be overlooked. Kansas City Chiefs, they know that this guy is going to be able to, he sees the ball, he's going to get that ball. He's a ball hawk, so to say. But he also had 33 solo tackles and 52 combined tackles. I think that so long as Nohl Williams develops well from the rest of training camp into the preseason and kind of eases his way into the regular rotation on the defense this season for the regular season, I think that he's going to be a rookie that you're going to want to keep your eye on. Sure, like his potential lists, he's going to be a backup option. But much like the rest of this Kansas City Chiefs draft class, that's how they're going to have to start right now. Besides Josh Simmons and his presence and natural talent, they're guys from Omar Norman Lott to Brashard Smith, the second-round picks to the seventh-round pick. They're going to have to earn their footing in the system. However, like I've said about Ashton Gelati in the past and Jalen Royals for that matter, I think that down the stretch, God forbid injuries happen, Nohl Williams is going to be a guy that the Kansas City Chiefs can rely on. I think that there's going to be a game or two down the line where he's going to be an explosive contributor on the defensive side of the football. He's going to be able to elevate this defense and help getting the Chiefs into the top 10 in that category overall as a defense once again. As always, though, ladies and gentlemen, you can follow me over on X at Dom Minchella. I post and repost every single day. You're not going to want to miss any coverage as we get closer to the regular seasons for the Kansas City Chiefs. You can also follow us over at KC Chiefs on SI, over on X as well. Everything exclusively content is for free for you, the Chiefs Kingdom. Kansas City Chiefs on SI is a place to get your Kansas City Chiefs news as they get closer to the regular season. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, my name is Dominic Minchella. Be kind to one another, and I'll see you tomorrow.